Everyone knows that bread and butter has always been about that flashy, catchy marketing, but the actual performance of this paddle is seriously next level. I'll be so bold as to say that the new Gen 4 all foam core Loco has made its mark as my favorite paddle currently on the market here in 2025. I've been so pumped to talk about this one that I'm actually filming this review on the only vacation I'll have for my residency for the rest of this year. It may be to bread and butter's dismay, and I don't even care if it was on purpose or just a lucky accident, but the little nuances and important construction details really satisfy the nerd in me, and they translate to performance in a big way, and I'll go over all those details and some other need-to-know details later on in this video. The first wave of pre-orders on these paddles go live on August 20th, and with this channel's discount code PBMED, you can bring the final price of an all-foam Loco to $180, a price that I think is very fair for what you get here. And before we go any further, I have confirmed with Bread and Butter that they're continuing on their 30-day love it or return it policy, meaning you can take 30 days from the day this paddle was delivered, play with it, test it, whatever, and if you don't like it before the 30 days are up, you can literally just return it for a full refund. Just to illustrate some overall value points here, comparing the price of this paddle certainly puts it on the cheaper end of Gen 4 all foam core paddles, and among the paddles on the list, there are only 2 paddles with policies that allow you to actually try the paddle and return it if you don't like it. One is the Loco and the other is the $250 Carbon True Foam. And if you're wondering, didn't Bread and Butter already have a Loco? Well, let's get into that. Bread and Butter did used to have a Gen 2 thermoformed Loco paddle, but it's since been retired, and in its honor, their new all-foam core series will be named after it. But don't confuse the two, this new Loco plays much more powerfully, poppy, and better in pretty much every way than the original Loco did. The new Loco also comes in 3 shapes, which include their standard/wide body shape, their hybrid shape, and their elongated shape, the measurements of which I'll put on screen now. Bread and Butter has had limited supply up to this point, so most reviewers got to pick their single shape of choice to review and test. I chose the hybrid shape, so just know as I go through this video, most of my thoughts on playability pertain to the hybrid shape in particular, which is why I'm calling this a first impression video. The paddles that we tested also had the previous Loco graphics, but the new ones that'll be available to the public will come jam-packed with the new design, but will include the same internal tech as the model that I have here. In terms of launch batches, these paddles will be sold in 72-hour windows, and I'll put those on screen now. The idea here is to avoid overloading their factories and Bread and Butter shipping capability, and prioritize getting paddles to paying customers on time and avoid delays. So for the first 6 or so weeks, you can buy a Gen 4 Loco within the 72-hour windows until the window closes or the set limit of units for that window sells out, whichever comes first. Now let's talk about the construction that makes these paddles special. Looking at the X-rays, you can see the dual foam core, which has the denser EPP foam in the center, fully encapsulated by a lighter EVA foam ring, essentially creating a Gen 4 floating foam core. The fact that where the EVA and EPP foam cores meet is straight might seem unremarkable, but the straight edge allows more movement between the core and the edge foam and gives the paddle more of a compressive, pocketing type feel in comparison to paddles like the Honolulu NF paddles that have a more patterned meetup and a stiffer feel to them. If you compare the X-rays of the Loco to the Honolulu J2 FC+, which has subjectively a higher dwell time and more pockety type feel than the NFs, you can see that it also has a straight edge, but one difference between these two is the fully closed ring portion of the Loco, creating more of a floating core as opposed to the diving board or peninsula core of the FC+. The Gearbox GX2 also does something similar with their Gen 4 floating core, but the center has a different type of foam and carbon fiber channels, which still give it a high dwell time and compressive type feel, but is a little more dampened in comparison to the feel of the Loco with one solid core piece. You'll see the core of the Loco also has those 2 strips of carbon fiber tape along the side, which serve to increase stability, sweet spot, and provide some structural integrity. But there's also what appears to be an extra piece of tape down at the bottom of the face here. I'm not sure if that adds a significant effect to the paddle's playability or durability really, but nonetheless, it's there for whatever reason. Since I've had my testing time on the hybrid model, I'll throw its stats on the screen alongside some other comparable 16mm all foam core paddles. Comparatively speaking, the spread on most of these numbers is actually pretty close, with a few outliers I'll point out. The first is that the static weight of my Honolulu J2NF was by far the heaviest of all 4 of these, but this is actually a great example of a time when something like balance point, or essentially the center of gravity of a paddle, has a greater influence on how a paddle feels than static weight, because the J2NF actually feels like the lightest in the hand of all 4 of these models. The range in twist weight among these 4 models spanned about 0.5 points, and though I wouldn't draw too much in terms of sweet spot size from these numbers, I would say the sweet spots on the Loco and J2NF are on the higher side, while the Laser and Surtur are more average, subjectively speaking. A higher balance point on some of these paddles gives them the impression of feeling just a little bit more head heavy, which I actually like a little bit of for rolls, flicks, and topspin. But if you don't like that feeling, that's one of the easiest metrics to bring down, as adding 9 grams of weight to the butt cap brought the balance point of the Loco down 10 points from 241 to 231, giving it a feel that's much more balanced and easy to turn over. My weight setup for the hybrid Locos so far includes about 4 inches of 0.5 gram per inch tuning tape around the bottom corners and no weight on the butt cap, which serves to further increase the stability and the pocketing effect of the foam core. For overall playability, this thing seriously rocks and is clearly a top tier power paddle. It quickly took over as my main from the first day I hit it, and it definitely has the wow factor. One huge thing is that this has a really satisfying broken in feel right out of the box, and even though it's early, I have hit this paddle every time I've played since I've gotten it, and its performance hasn't changed one bit. It's plush and absorbent feeling and has that classic thud sound that a lot of broken in Gen 3 paddles have. And it has a little bit of that grab and throw type feel I enjoy, as opposed to the more stiff feeling pop of paddles like the Franklin C45 or the Holbrook Arma. Spin also falls into that wow category, and I think the ball absorption combined with a really high quality face material puts some superb shape on the ball. The pop is high, but not so high that it's uncontrollable. Personally, I feel like this paddle is more controllable than the Boomstick, the Ripple, the Groove and Laser Solid Foam, but maybe a touch more challenging than the Honolulu J2FC Plus. Despite all my talk of a higher balance point and whatnot, this paddle still feels really maneuverable in the hand, even with the weight I added at the bottom corners. The sound the paddle makes is also really satisfying, as I really am a sucker for that classic thud sound. If I were to rank the Loco on a chart for drive speed and pop against some other Gen 4 foam paddles or some pertinent Gen 3s, the Loco lands in the upper third in both categories, at the very least, which gives it a super solid drive speed and pop that's still relatively attainable to manage and control for most people out there. I really can't stress enough how awesome this paddle plays and how great it feels just from a performance standpoint alone. If I were to put it in comparative terms for the paddle I think it plays most like, I'd say it plays most like what a slightly dialed up J2FC Plus would feel like. In fact, these two paddles are built very similarly, and they're 2 of the top choices for best paddles on the market right now. Comparing them directly, the Loco has the advantage in power and pop, while the J2FC Plus is a touch more light and maneuverable. The Loco is also less wide at the bottom of its paddle face, leaving more room for 2 hands, with the trade-off being that the FC Plus is just a marginal amount more stable. Some other perks include the 30-day love it or return it policy of the Loco and the longer 1-year warranty of the J2FC Plus. And there you have it, that's my take on the new all-foam Loco from Bread & Butter. I hope the review was helpful. I hope you enjoyed joining me on vacation. Like always, let me know if you have anything to add or any questions in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you here for the next one.